Oh, seven commanders, Dimebot here, and let's have a talk. No Man's Sky has reignited the furor over ship interiors with its latest update, and more than ever, I'm seeing comments on Elite videos of ship interiors win. For years it was Space Legs win, and then we got Odyssey, and now it's ship interiors win, ship interiors win. Ship interiors maybe never, or maybe ship interiors as a surprise. And let's talk about why. And I want to be very clear here before we get into this. I would love to see ship interiors. I am not saying in this video that I don't want ship interiors, despite the fact that I'm going to play devil's advocate and raise some points against. So let's not get that twisted in the comments. I'd love to see ship interiors. But hey, let's go ahead and dive on in and talk about it. So one of the things that we have to keep in mind is that Frontier, as a studio, are very deliberate in what they add to the game and making it fit gameplay loops or designing out gameplay loops that come naturally from existing ones. Colonization is a great example of this. And yes, I know people are going to say colonization is nothing but a hauling grind. That's neither here nor there. I'm not going to say I can disagree with you, but colonization naturally evolves out of the mining gameplay loop, out of the hauling gameplay loop, trading. And I have to be very conscious of this when they put new gameplay loops into the game. Let's take a look at the new mining ship. It is getting that bespoke mining cannon that can do both surface and abrasive mining, the Type 11 Prospector. That is very much a considered evolution of a gameplay loop. FDev is not a studio that just jumps out with wild things and just adds them for the sake of adding them. And that, I think, might be part of the problem with ship interiors. Now, yeah, ship interiors were talked about way back in the day in the Kickstarter. David Braben actually talked about them at one point. But the point we've come to now, almost a decade later, development time and resources for ship interiors would be immense for several reasons. And they would want to make sure that those spaces inside the ship serve some type of gameplay purpose. That's the type of studio that FDev is. Everything that they put in, they want it to have some gameplay purpose. They don't want it to be a filler space with no use that you just walk through. So let's dive a little deeper into that development time and resources thing real quick that I mentioned. There's several problems facing them when it comes to possibly developing ship interiors. One is that ship scaling is not correct across the board for this to work on all ships. The newer ships are better. If you walk up the ramps on the newer ships, you notice that your pilot will generally be kind of the right size to go through the door, although this is not always the case. The older ships, that is definitely not the case. If you've all felt ships don't feel quite as big as they should in Elite Dangerous. And some of this is down to visual tricks like the cockpit windows being too large in some cases, which they've alluded to. In other cases, the ships simply are not quite right. And trying to physicalize and squeeze everything into them that you would need to would require some work on their part. And then you come down to the design language. And anybody that's played Star Citizen will be familiar with this. And you think about it, it applies to Elite too. Every shipmaker in Elite has a design language. We all know when we're sitting down in the cockpit of a Lakon ship. We all know when we're sitting down in a Zorgon Peterson ship because of the cockpit. Now, this has to translate to the rest of the ship. And Frontier is very big on having their identities with their shipmakers. So what does a Zorgon Peterson ship corridor look like? What does a Lakon ship corridor look like? What do the handles and the doors look like? What do the light covers look like? Is there wiring exposed? Is there not wiring exposed? How would they make a bunk? How would a bunk space look? What's your galley look like? This is something that they would have to develop for every single ship manufacturer. All the parts, all the fittings, all the little fiddly bits that go into the actual spaces of a ship. This is all design language that has to be made, and it has to work. It has to look like that ship manufacturer, or we would all pitch a fit, and rightfully so. We'd be like, this is not right. This doesn't look like what the inside of an Anaconda would look like because you've got a freaking door handle from a Mandalay over here. It's a thing that they have to take time to develop. They have to have the art worked up. They have to have it modeled. They have to have it integrated. They have to be able to use it as building blocks in the game. And once they got done for one ship for a company, they could easily copy and paste it because just like car manufacturers, you see parts copied and pasted on ships. And I believe that they could do that. But that is a significant time and resource constraint on the studio. Now, in addition to them having to do all of that, there could be issues with the game being not fully physicalized. Like Star Citizen, fully physicalized game, you're moving around inside the ships. Elite was not built for that, and there is every chance it would cause massive problems. I have flown out of a ship in Star Citizen while climbing a ladder as it flies numerous times, and that's something that Frontier would have to worry about potentially as well. And we all know that Frontier's Elite's netcode is not exactly the most accurate thing in the world. However, that all being said, I think there is a way that they could do this, and we have seen it in effect already in the game. And I think there's a way that they could do it, and they could make it cool, and they could also really make some money off of it. Now, they wouldn't satisfy everybody, and you're cringing at me saying making money, but remember, we need Frontier to be making money if we want to get new stuff and keep Elite Dangerous alive. So that's always got to be something that we have to talk about. If you think about space stations and fleet carriers, those are actual realized locations, but they're not fully realized. We have that little shopping mall double tier area on the stations, no matter what station it is, where you can look out into the hangar bay. You're never going to go out into the landing bay. You're never going to get in a truck and drive around those ring roads. You're never going to go check out those big stacks of cargo containers. It's just not happening. However, you are in that space. How do you get there? You get in an elevator, and then the game teleports you and spits you at the other side of the elevator. It does the same thing in fleet carriers. They could do this for ships. They could have a couple of spaces that you go to, and then the cockpit. And that could be it. Maybe they don't have to fully build the inside of all ships. Now, a lot of people would cry foul on that, but you would still have some ship interiors as long as we had a way to get in and out of the ship and maybe a couple spaces to hang around in with our crew and then go to the cockpit. That is a possibility, and that opens up some things that they could do. That would allow them to do EVA operations, which again is something that's way back from the Kickstarter days. Yes, EVA operations require more dev time because we don't have a working model for us to float around in space as a first-person, third-person character model right now, but it's something that could be done, and modeling bespoke spaces, but not all of a ship, would give them a way to say, hey, that wrecked Anaconda, you can go get in it and rummage around maybe for some stuff. We already rummage around broken ships on planet surfaces. It's not a huge stretch to say that maybe it could be done in space. And that opens up the ability for them to let us decorate our spaces, to put things around, to have different color palettes, different patterns inside the ship. And that equates to cosmetic sales. And yes, I can hear people moaning in the comments right now. But as I said, FDev needs to make money in order to keep supporting Elite Dangerous. And don't tell me that you wouldn't buy some cosmetics to stick around in the social hub of a ship, or to put in, say, your bed, or things like that. We already buy trinkets for the cockpit dashes of our ship. We already buy string lights. We already buy paint jobs. It's not a stretch that a lot of people would spend ARCs on cosmetics. And I think that would be a great place for them to do it. It would also provide a social space for you to hang out with your crew members, in multi-crew, if people actually use multi-crew for that. But it would be a way to hang out. And I think that there's a line they could walk there. They don't need to fully physicalize. I've been auto-loading cargo for a decade. I don't want it to be like other games where I load cargo by hand. But there's a fine line that they could walk there that could make it their own identity, make it something that would work within the constraints of the Elite Dangerous universe, make it work within the development resources that they have allowable to them, and make it something that we could enjoy as players. However, this is all speculative. This is ultimately up to Frontier. Now, I don't know if player outcry will be enough to get to them if we all raise our voices loud enough, but ultimately, however they might choose to implement, this is a significant resource, money, time sink in development, and they're only going to do it if they think it's worth implementing. And hopefully they've learned the lessons from the past looking at you, Odyssey Beta, and they implement it in a way that works. So that's my 2 cents on ship interiors. Like I said, would I love to see them? Yes. Are there significant hurdles to it? Yes. Are they overcomable? Absolutely. But again, I'll leave you guys with this. It's all up to FDev, and the only thing we can do is ask. Like and subscribe. 07 Commanders. I'm Dimebot. I'll see you next time.